Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, and today I'm coming to you from St. C Academy. And I want to just give thanks to my father, who's deceased, and my mother, who is still with us, and who helped, who were with me when we first initially started the school back in 1986. And I'm continuing that legacy. Um, so last week I was began a conversation about where do we go from here with Dr. King, and I wanted to continue because the more you read this book, the more profound. The more profound you understand this man was a prophet. And also, when you consider all of the things that are going, we've had folks who have been prophesying all along. America has had so many people tell them to stop doing this foolishness. But anyway, here we go. So he's written several books, but this one I'm going to continue um, and finish with on this space. What I wanted to also do, though, I know we're all mourning. People are mourning the African American, Mr. Keith Porter, uh, Renee Good, and young man Alex Petty. I tell you, I don't know how their family is handling this situation. I know they're all mourning, and it's just insane where we are right now. But we have to remember that this is American history. It is. There's no bones about it. Um, I don't know how many people remember. I was about 7 years old, I believe, when this happened, or six. But um, back in 1968, three African American students were killed and 28 were injured at South Carolina State University. And the young men's names were, these were African American men, and they were, protesting, and they were not armed. And this is how they were treated. So this is 1968. And it was in February. So I was probably February 1968. I was maybe 6 years old still because I hadn't had a birthday yet. Um, but the army came in and all children protesting on a college campus, and the students are standing around a bonfire, and they just opened fire and injured 28, but killed these three young men: Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and I think his name is Delano Middleton. So those three young men, peaceful protesters. And then May 1970, these same people killed four young white young young white people. Allison Cross, William Schroeder, Jeffrey Miller, and Sandra. I think it's Schuer or Skewer. I'm not sure. It's Sky or something like that. Anyway, her name pronounces SCH. So I don't know if it's Ska or Sha, whatever. But they were four of them were killed, and 10 other students were wounded. And these were fighting, or not fighting, protesting, unarmed, against the military entering Cambodia. And then Jackson State University. These two young men, Philip Lafayette Gibbs here, and James Earl Green here. And they were at Jackson State University um, protesting for civil rights. And 12 students were killed, and 12 students were wounded. So this is America. This is America. Shooting unarmed people who are protesting is what America does. And so the violence of the 1960s to 1970s were in response to young people protesting wars in Vietnam or protesting for civil rights. And there was also, King's assassination was in 1968, and Malcolm X's assassination was in 1965. And it just seems like we do not understand, or we don't remember, or we have chosen to forget uh, that the government has a history of assassinating unarmed people, teenagers and college students, white and black, male and female. Um, the country has always been fascist leaning. Um, well, not leaning, just fascist. But because we don't teach these historical events enough, or we think that what we see in our current political environment is something new, or something that has been dormant and hadn't happened in a long time. I am 64 years old. All of these three are just the ones that happened when I was a child. So, hey, this is America. And so, yeah, I was 6, 7 years old when this first thing happened. I was only 3 years old, 4 years old when, maybe not quite four, because he was killed like in April. So I was only 4 years old, 3 years old when Malcolm X was killed, and so assassinated. And so this is America. This is what they do. And so in this particular uh, political environment, we need to understand that this the police, the military have always been given latitude to do what they wanted to. Now, what I want to say is quickly, I want to give Mark, I told him already that I'm giving him some kudos, because last week when I mentioned that I was going to have my students read, I mean, when he mentioned that he read this when he was in high school, when he was still a high school student, I said, oh, I think I'm going to let my students, my high schoolers read this. Last year we read Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and they really enjoyed it. I was surprised, but they really got a lot out of that book, and I had them do different exercises. So I'm going to probably do the same thing, have them do reflections, have them answer questions, do a little bit of research. In some of these situations, they can draw pictures and stuff like that. But I'm going to kind of give them some ways of expressing what they're reading, make it as much therapeutic and not as heavy as it could be. It's going to be heavy no matter what we do. But so since Mark read, where do we go from here? My students, I have 5 high schoolers who are also going to read this book. And one of the first assignments they will have is to research these situations with these young people that I just showed you. Look at Kent State, look at Jacksonville, look at South Carolina State University, so they understand that this is something that has been happening. Also, I want them to. I've already pulled up the definition. I mean, what the First Amendment, and so they're going to read the First Amendment. I'm going to break it down, dissect it, and then we're going to determine if the victim's rights in this particular situation, as well as the victim rights now, were violated, or was the government justified in its actions. And so we're going to examine that. And they will determine what is outside the scope of protection of the First Amendment, or what justifies government suppression, if there is a reasonable situation that exists. Because we know that in most cases, they're like, one of the things you can't do is yell fire in a theater or in a closed environment at a facility where you have so many people. So that would be one way that freedom of speech can be inciting violence against the people and cause injury or death, even with people stampeding or whatever. But so I want to just thank Mark for mentioning that he read this book and his youth, and I hope that my students are impacted as much as by this literature the same way he was, because Mark got it going on. He's out here serving the community. So I wanted to start with reading chapter 3, or part 3, and part 3 is racism and white backlash. Oh, so here. It was time for all of us to tell each other the truth about who and what have brought the Negro to the condition of deprivation against which he struggles today. In human relations, the truth is hard to come by because most groups are deceived about themselves. Rationalization and the incessant search for scapegoats are the psychological cataracts that blind us to our individual and collective sins. But the day has passed for bland euphemisms. Who lives with untruth lives in spiritual slavery. Freedom is still the bonus we receive for knowing the truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It would be neither true nor honest to say that the Negro status is what it is because he is innately inferior, or because he is basically lazy and listless, or because he has not sought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps. To find the origins of the Negro problem, we must turn to the white man's problem. Oh, I love this. As Earl Conrad says in a recent book, The Invention of the Negro, I have sought out these new routes of the unshakable conviction that the question involved there cannot be and never could be answered merely by examining the Negro himself, his ghettos, his history, his personality, his culture. For the answer to how the Negro status came to be what it is does not lie essentially in the world of the Negro, but in the world of the white. In short, white America must assume the guilt for the black man's inferior status. Ever since the birth of our nation, white America has had a schizophrenic personality on the question of race. She has been torn between selves, a self in which she proudly professed the great principles of democracy, and a self in which she sadly practiced the antithesis of democracy. This tragic duality has produced a strange indecisiveness and ambivalence toward the Negro, causing America to take a step backward simultaneously with every step forward on the question of racial justice, to be at once attracted to the Negro and repelled by him, to love and to hate him. There has never been a solid, unified, and determined thrust to make justice a reality for African Americans. Afro Americans is what he wrote. The step backward has a new name today. It is called the white backlash. But the white backlash is nothing new. It is the surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of Black power nor by the unfortunate recent wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today is rooted in the same problem that has characterized America ever since the Black man landed in chains on the shores of this nation. White backlash is an expression of the same vacillations, the same search for rationalizations, the same lack of commitment that have always characterized a white America on the face of race. What is the source of this perennial indecision and vacillation? It lies in the congenital deformity of racism that has crippled the nation from its inception. That the roots of racism are very deep in America. Historically, it was so acceptable in the national life that today it still only lightly burdens the conscience. No one surveying the moral landscape of our nation can overlook the hideous and pathetic wreckage of commitment, twisted and turned to 1,000 shapes under the stress of prejudice and irrationality. So let's look at this. So today we have created the phrase race is a made up construct. We have all decided there's no such thing as race. And there is no race but human. In 1968, Dr. King clearly states that this is the white man's problem because he, her, because we're going to throw the women in here too. It is a white person's problem collectively. They created racial divides, religious divides, gender divides, and hierarchies that place them at the top of the pyramid for no other reason except whiteness. So, not merit, not morality or virtue, not intelligence or skills, just skin complexion and a determination to center the racial identity, their racial identity as the standard for humanity. They made themselves the model, and anything else is trying to be like that model, has to refine itself to that model. They think they're the standard, and they're not. So back to page 173. All right. This does not imply that all white Americans are racist. Far from it. Many white people have, through a deep moral compulsion, fought long and hard for racial justice. Nor does it mean that America has made no progress in her attempt to cure the body politic of the disease of racism, or that the dogma of racism has not been considerably modified in recent years. So we know that we have made some progress. We can't deny it. We came here enslaved, and we moved through this stuff. In this section, we see that Dr. King had already stated that racism was a cultish religious idolatry. Oh, let me get to that, because I love that. The step backward has a new name today. It is called the white backlash. Oh, wait, no, I already read that one. Sorry. So, what is racism? Dr. George Kelsey, in a profound book entitled Racism and the Christian Understanding of Man, states that racism is a faith, it is a form of idolatry. I love it. In its early modern beginnings, racism was a justificatory device. It did not emerge as a faith. It arose as an ideological justification for the constellations of political and economic power, which were expressed in colonialism and slavery. But gradually, the idea of the superior race was heightened and deepened in meaning and value so that it pointed beyond the historical structure of relation in which it emerged to human existence itself. And so, this is Dr. George Kelsey in his book, Racism and the Christian Understanding of Man. And that's what he says. And so, in this section, we already stated that racism was a cultural religious idolatry. I hate when people refer to these people as Christians. I'm like, why are we calling them Christians? White Christians? No, because they do not worship Yeshua. Their doctrine does not center the teachings of Yeshua. Their doctrine centers violence against any group that challenges the God of whiteness. These words from Dr. King must be revived in our conversation that they are not white Christians. Don't call them that. They're not white Christian nationalists. They're not white evangelicals. Not white superiority, not white morality, not white virtue, intelligence, but whiteness, period. That they're just worshiping their whiteness, nothing else about it. And then they created all these lies to undergird it, but none of this stuff is true. Race, okay, in her race science politics, Ruth Benedict expands on the theme by defining racism as the dogma that one ethnic group is condemned by nature to hereditary inferiority, and another group is destined to hereditary superiority. It is the dogma that the hope of civilization depends upon eliminating some races and keeping others pure. It is a dogma that one race has carried progress throughout human history and can alone ensure future progress. Since racism is based on the dogma that the hope of civilization depends upon eliminating some races and keeping others pure. Its ultimate logic is genocide, which is what Hitler did, right? Try to annihilate people. So if a man asserts that another man, because of his race, is not good enough to have a job equal to his, or to eat at a lunch counter next to him, or to have access to certain hotels or to attend school with him or to live next door to him, he is by implication affirming that that man does not deserve to exist. He does not deserve to exist because his existence is corrupt and defective. Racism is a philosophy based on contempt for life. It is a philosophy that King says is anti life because it supposes that only one group of people are entitled to food, shelter, health care, the pursuit of love, happiness, autonomy, fulfillment of their dreams and aspirations, and everyone else is subjugated to them. And those who dare to oppose this philosophy must be insane, suffering from what we remember drapetomania. I used this concept when I was in my doctoral thing regarding curriculum. Europeans literally believed that Africans were insane. It was a pseudo medical diagnosis created by an obviously mentally ill person named Dr. Samuel Cartwright in 1851, which stated that Africans who wanted to escape and be free were suffering from a mental illness and must be treated with absolute brutality, whippings, in order to address it. And so let me skip on over here. So, of the two dominant and contradictory strains in the American psyche, the positive one, our democratic heritage, was the later development on the American continent. Democracy, born in the 18th century, took from John Locke of England the theory of natural rights and the justification of revolution and imbued it with the ideal of a society governed by the people. And so Jefferson and about 5 other men decided that they were going to write this Declaration of Independence, right? And so people were so excited. They said Ben Franklin, he says here that Ben Franklin said this about describing the new nation. He has torn lightning from the sky, and soon he will tear the scepters from the kings. And so right now we got somebody who wants to be a king. But that was what Benjamin Franklin said about this democracy in the United States. Thomas Paine also said, we have the power to begin the world over again. So, no, I said, let me go back and read. And I'm sure that some of you may have remembered that I did some research on democratic practices in Africa, right? So the hypocrisy and cognitive dissonance and mental illness is unbelievable because these people literally are talking about democracy and freedom and then own slaves. Most of those guys that signed that thing, I think the majority of them had owned slaves. So, cognitive dissonance, hypocrisy, mental illness is unbelievable. But when Dr. King wrote this book, he probably didn't know there was no documentation of the Kurkan Fuga or the Hunter's Oath, which were written in 1236. I know Kurkan Fuga was written in 1236 by the Mali, in Mali by Sunjata Keita, who was at that time the Mansa of Mali. And the Kurkan Fuga, according to hilarious, according to Google, is considered the oldest. It says right here, is considered one of the earliest human rights declarations. The Kurkan Fuga. There it is. And then another group of people, they were called the Gutla system of Botswana. And as you can see, it's an enduring pre-colonial and living example of direct democracy where village members openly debate local issues. What does that say at the top? Key aspects of indigenous African democracy includes these people. Then you have accountability mechanisms in many pre-colonial societies, such as the Congo Kingdom A leader's authority depended on the will of the people, allowing for the removal of leaders who failed to represent their constituents. Pre-colonial. Now, decentralized governance. Many African societies operated through clan-based decentralized systems that prioritize collective decision making over autocratic rule. These traditions were often distorted or suppressed by European colonial bureaucratic and patriarchal systems. However, modern African political thought and practice often seek to incorporate these indigenous participatory and consultative approaches, sometimes blending them with representatives systems to form a unique cultural expression of democracy. So, democracy, that concept of equitable interaction in decision making, consensus decision making amongst everybody, is African, not America, not England, not John Locke. He did not come up with that. He may have written it, but he was not the first one. That is authentically something that belongs to us. And so TJ and his crew were not the first to create a democracy on paper. And realistically, if slavery really existed, you have slavery existed in this country, and you're writing a document about freedom. Is that hypocrisy? Yes. It can't be a true democracy. America has not been a true democracy. If you can abuse people, deny them citizenship, deny them a voice, and America only became a democracy or close to a democracy for everybody in 1964. Oh, wait a minute, not until 1973, because women were still they could vote, but they still could not own cars. They could not purchase houses or cars or have credit. My mother could not have credit until 1970s, and in that time she was in her 30s. Whatever. I was 10 years old. So I guess this year we're going to celebrate this 250-year celebration of this infantile country, because 250 years, compared to Molly is like, how many thousand years? It's at least 1,000 years old. However, Africans have been fighting these unscrupulous folks penetrating evil for 5 to 6 centuries. We've been fighting them for 500 to 600 years. And so I don't know if I have time to read 75 and 76, but it's important to understand that the institution of slavery was so important to the economic development of America. It had a profound impact in shaping the social, political, legal structure of the nation. So what did freedom really mean? What was America about? America has always been about money. We can end here today because many of us Americans, many white Americans, seem to finally have awakened to the problem of an economic system grounded in capitalism. They have found out finally that billionaires, millionaires, and corporations do not care about humans. If only they knew that greed drives the wars, and not virtue, not freedom, and not greatness, but greed. And Dr. King states clearly that our country's decision makers are influenced by greed, only for resources. The God of whiteness has been used to distract most white people into thinking that they were better than African Americans. And any evidence that this belief was proven false led to violence. That is why they burned our communities, burned our schools, burned our churches, and just killed Black people, lynched us for no reason. But today our ancestors brought folks together. So I believe that our ancestors in 2024 November, they said, guess what y'all gonna do? Vote for this woman. And so 92% of Black women and 78% of Black men represented the highest majority of unity on what we need to do. White women were like 50-something%, and white men were like 56 or 7% or whatever. But Black people, 92% and 78%, we were on the same page. And we decided when the thing didn't go the way we wanted to do, we all decided to sit down and we're like, you guys got it. And now we got white folks out here protesting and looking at us like, why aren't y'all coming? We are not coming. We're gonna let you all fight. And I think our ancestors want us to sit down. And if they didn't, why did 90% of us figure that out? Just nobody had to say anything. We just said, I'm done. And so instead of marching the streets, we have decided that they got it. And now they know that serving the God of whiteness is a scam and has been all along. Ashe. Put this on over here. The scam all along. Uh-oh. Hey, Mark. Okay, let me see. Oh. Oh. Oh no, let me just go.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So don't they hear you? You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.